All right, we're good.
Thank you. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We are here to do the people's business, and we're going to begin. Call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, we will address the items on the special call meeting agenda. So we'll do that prior to a vote to go into closed session. Chair recognizes Madam Clerk.
Item number 3 is to discuss to allow outside events on city property if they meet CDC guidelines plan they have established for outside events. This was deferred from our February 16th meeting. It was requested by Commissioner Sean Franham.
Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate everybody's work on this. I'd like to make a motion to remove COVID restrictions specifically for the market and allow the working group to bring back formal recommendations.
Second.
Mr. Gill, I have a question on that.
I had a question.
Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 6th.
When you said, Commissioner, when you say remove COVID restriction, what does that mean? When you say remove them,
I'm going to let the administrator speak to this because I meant to say actually citywide. So I'll defer to the administrator on this one.
Yeah, so I think in following up with Parks and Recreation as well as with Commissioner Franton, what we're looking at is right now, based on COVID restrictions and guidelines, the market is not able to operate. There's an appetite to expand beyond the market, which the working group is managing. So his request is simply ensuring that the market is able to operate during this time so that we don't lose that revenue. We've got a plan in place and we'll be able to monitor and manage it. But those other specific areas, whether it's outside dining or for other activities, restrictions haven't been released on those. And so he's basically proposing to give us time to be able to figure that out through the working group, but not lose this valuable revenue for a process that we already kind of have in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franham,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias.
He's muted.
You're muted, Mr.
He's
Sias.
muted.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Sias voting no. Item number 4 is approval of a resolution being drafted and brought before the commission for a vote on today, 224, in opposition of the Georgia Senate Bill 67, 68, 69, 70, 73, 74, and other bills aimed at restricting methods available to Augusta residents to exercise their right to vote or cause undue financial burden on voters. This item was deferred from our February 16th meeting, requested by Mayor Hardy Davis.
Chair recognizes Attorney Brown to speak to the resolution.
Yes, sir.
Would you want to speak to the resolution? What's in it?
I can. I wasn't prepared. I thought you want to speak to it.
Well, I didn't have enough time to review it.
Okay. Wow. All right. The commission had requested at the last commission meeting that this item be brought forth at the special call meeting due to the urgency of the Senate bills that that are being proposed in the General Assembly. This is a resolution In opposition of Georgia Senate Bill 67, 68, 69, 71, 73, 74, and any other bills aimed at restricting methods available to Augusta residents to exercise their right to vote or cause any undue financial hardship to voters. Augusta, by this resolution, is reaffirming the importance of every citizen having a right to vote as being a fundamental and constitutional right, and that no legislation should be enacted to hinder citizens' right to vote. Therefore, if Augusta is deciding today whether to resolve to oppose Georgia General Assembly Bill 67, 68, 69, 71, 73, 74, and any other bills that infringe upon the fundamental rights of citizens to exercise their right to vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Chair recognizes Mayor Pro Tem.
motion to approve.
Second.
Chair recognizes Administrator Donald.
Yes, Mayor, I think we had just briefly spoken regarding making sure that all of the bills were included. But just to follow up, so you have that confirmation, because I know our state partners asked about it. It is included because he called out those bill numbers, but it also includes any other bills that support it. So it's right on target, and you're right on it for observing that. So it's good.
Thank you. Voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Branham,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Chair recognizes Commissioner from the floor.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to speak before the vote was taken. I had my hand up, but it's irrelevant at this point.
Okay. All right. Thank you. My apologies, sir. Chair recognizes Attorney Brown.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, will request a motion to enter executive session to discuss litigation, personnel, and real estate.
So moved.
Second.
Voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Branham,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Mr. Hassan.
He's
You're
muted.
muted, sir.
He's muted.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Yes.
We're going to transition into closed session, everyone.
It's so bright. It got 40 minute battery on it.
All right. Clerk, Attorney Brown. All right, we're ready.
We're on the floor.
We are on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, we'll request a motion to execute the closed meeting affidavit.
So move.
Is that Commissioner Dennis?
Second.
Commissioner from the 4th and the,
The first, I think.
okay,
Mr. Jordan Johnson.
all right.
Okay.
Voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yeah.
doubt. Okay. Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sun,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams. You're muted, Mr. Bobby Williams. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Clark and Mr. Bobby Williams out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, to organize Attorney Brown.
We'll request a motion to approve settlement agreement and general release of claims and to adopt a resolution authorizing the settlement of all claims by Veronica Curry in the sum of $15,500. And to
So
authorize
moved.
and to authorize the mayor to execute settlement documents and the finance department to disperse the settlement amount, waiving Augusta, Georgia code ordinances in conflict in this instance only, and for other purposes payable pursuant to the settlement agreement with the customary terms prepared by Augusta Law Department in the settlement agreement.
Second.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Williams and Mr. Franum.
Garrett and Franum.
Franum.
Voting.
Mr. Clark,
He's out.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sun.
Ms. Molly, which one of those we voting on? I'm sorry.
We're voting
This is-
on the resolution of settlement for Veronica Curry.
No.
Okay. Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Clark out and Mr. Hassan voting no.
Mayor, thank you. A motion to approve a settlement in the matter of BR Investment versus Richmond County Board of Tax Assessors, case number 2021 RCCV 00062 in the amount of $20,000 and authorize the transfer of the $20,000 from contingency funds to the Law Department settlement account for payment of attorney fees.
So moved.
Second.
Give that to Miss Scott, please, in case it go wrong.
Okay, Mr. Clark. Out, Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Clark out.
Next item, Attorney Brown.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as related and companion items, I have three motions to read for adoptions of three resolutions. The first one is motion to adopt and approve a resolution authorizing the settlement of all claims by Brianna Anderson as parents and legal guardian of Sage Cartherin in the aggregate amount of $425,000. And further authorizing the administrator to disperse the amount of $425,000, waiving Augusta, Georgia Code of Ordinances section in conflict with this matter in this instance only, as stated in the caption of the resolution. The other resolution, number 2, is a motion to adopt and approve the resolution authorizing the settlement of all claims of Brandon Anderson and Maniko Anderson as the parents and legal guardian of Braxton Anderson, the claimant, in the aggregate amount of $80,000. Authorizing the administrator to disperse said $80,000, waiving Augusta Code of Ordinances sections in conflict for this instance only and for other purposes. And finally, a motion to adopt and approve a resolution authorizing the settlement of all claims by Brianna Anderson in the aggregate amount of $75,000 and further authorizing the administrator to disperse said $75,000, waiving Augusta, Georgia Code of Ordinances section in conflict in this instance only and for other purposes.
So move.
Second.
Voting.
Mr. Clark, out. Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Clark out.
There are no further motions to my knowledge, Mayor Davis.
Thank you. All right, I believe that's all the business before us, Madam Clerk. And we'll proceed with committee meetings.
All right, I'd like to call public services to order, 1 o'clock on the dot. Ms. Bonner,
Yes, sir.
number 1, please.
We'll see if we have in the public space, Ms. Walton, for the alcohol petitioners.
I don't see her. Let's start at number 4 and then we'll,
Okay.
I think, does she need to be here for 4?
Either she or Rob Sherman, if you needed any. I think Mr. Sherman would be number 4, but we could go to the other items and just double back.
Can we find out where they are? or
Yeah, we'll
whatever?
find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Sherman is on.
Okay, so let's start at number 4 and then we'll
Okay.
go back to 1 and 2 and 3 at the end.
Okay. Mr. Sherman, item number 4 is the alcohol ordinance. Request approval for amendment to the Augusta, Georgia Code Title 6. Go to the other items and just double back.
Can find out why, Mr. Sherman? Okay, can you explain to us what this is all about, Mr. Sherman?
Okay, now I just started hearing you. Which one are you on?
We're on
Number-
number 4, the alcohol ordinance.
Okay, the alcohol ordinance. So back in October of last year, I mentioned to you the recent House bill, legislators made some changes to the alcohol regulation. At the time, we were waiting on the Department of Revenue to interpret those regulations and tell us how to apply them. We have not gotten information yet on the centralized processing or home delivery of alcohol. But we have included in the amendments today, changing the hours for Sunday sales. Right now, for retail sales, it starts at 12:30. A year or so ago, we passed a referendum and it allowed the restaurants to move to begin serving alcohol earlier, the brunch bill at 11 a.m. The legislation from last year moved that time for all retail sales on Sundays. So it's to move the hour back to 11 a.m. for retail sales. The other item is pouring events at liquor stores, package stores. They can now have tasting events. And there's some regulations that they can only have 4 types of, say, wine out at a time, or 4 types of distilled spirits out at a time. And they have to register with the Planning and Development Department that they're going to have an event. I've included in here that there's a $25 fee. They can have 52 events a year. They can have them 52 consecutive or once a week. It's open. The other thing is the one second. Single events. So the around Masters time every year, we have the restaurants that have on-premise licenses come before you for a single event license to have a tent out in the parking lot. I guess in 2019, when they came before you, there was some discussion, or probably, yeah, it was 2019, asking, is there a better way to do this? At the time, because of the definition of premise that the revenue department has, which we have reflected in our ordinance, it meant that if you were selling the alcohol outside of your structure, it required a separate license. The revenue department redefined premise to include the property. So in the proposal, we redefined premise to reflect the revenue department's definition, but also we have to amend the single event license so that a restaurant that has an on-premise license that wants to set up a tent, they do have to apply for the single event license, just so that the sheriff's department and we know what they're doing, but it's not going to require them to come before you for approval. So it's just streamlining that process. And the last thing is on brown bagging. Brown bagging that section was a dated section in the ordinance. And so we just clarified it to say that you cannot brown bag into a premise that has an occupation tax certificate, that has a business license. And those are the things that are included.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Clark, then Commissioner Sias.
Thank you, sir. Is there any movement through the state about bars and Sunday sales without food, that they'll be allowed to be open?
No, not at this time. The last I heard was that Savannah was trying to push it because, of course, St. Patrick's Day, and just that it's sort of that type of a destination. The legislators did approve where local governments can approve one Sunday out of the year for bars to be open, but that's all at this time. I'm not aware of any other discussion about allowing bars to be open on every Sunday.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Sias.
Thank you, sir. I have maybe 3 or 4 questions for Mr. Sherman. The first one I want to ask is, when you said about a special event, they don't have to come to see us anymore, but they have to get this and want something from the sheriff's office and something from planning and development, but it doesn't have to come to the commission. My question is not so much why is that, but if the parking lot is part of their premises, why do they need all that information from everybody just to go out into the parking lot and not have to come to the commission?
Yeah, so generally what it means is they're going to put a tent in the parking lot and they're going to have a crowd. the sheriff's department wants to know where that's gonna be and when is it going to occur? Because the sheriff's department determines, and the fire department, how many off-duty deputies may be required or firemen may be required. And it's just to know what is going on and where there may be a crowd.
So they're not really asking permission, they're just notifying then, am I correct?
Well, it can be denied if say, if an on-premise licensee applies for a single event and it's a situation where the sheriff's office has had constant problems at their location, then it could be denied and they can appeal to the commission.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, good. I just want to know, because I could not see clearly if you need permission from somebody else, why the commission would not fit into that somewhere. Okay, I got that one. Second question. In reading through this agenda item, I saw a whole bunch of times, 11 o'clock, 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock. I need some clarification. I'm gonna ask it the way I can understand it.
Okay.
Up until now, a convenience store, to my understanding, had to wait until 1 o'clock on Sunday to sell alcohol. Was I wrong in that?
Well, they had to wait till let me turn to it myself.
1 p.m. on Sunday.
Okay, say 1 p.m. on Sunday. Off-premise consumption. Actually, they could not start selling before 12:30 p.m. on Sunday.
Yeah, I said serving, and I apologize for that. So you're saying that the convenience store, they can start selling alcohol at 12:30 versus 1 o'clock on Sunday?
No. Right now, they are not supposed to start selling before 12:30 p.m. on Sunday, but now they can go back to 11 a.m. The same as the restaurants that can, because of that brunch bill. So all retailers, liquor stores included, can begin selling at 11 a.m. on Sunday.
There was never a 1 o'clock thing in there?
Well, what I'm reading is off-premise shall not open for business earlier than 12:30 p.m. on Sunday.
Okay. Now, okay, no problem then. So right now then, we're back to 11 o'clock on Sunday for anybody that has a liquor license or a beer and wine license. They can start selling at 11 o'clock on a Sunday. 11 a.m. Let me make clear.
11 a.m. for all other than bars. Bars can't be open on Sunday.
Okay, but the ones who can open on Sunday and can sell,
Yes.
they can all start at 11 a.m.
Yes, that's
that was what I needed to clarify. You have a lot of information that's in the agenda item that's kind of, I don't want to say twisted, but
yeah,
so forth.
yeah.
All right, Chair, that's my question.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
You're seconding it, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Kind of weak there.
Voting, please, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sayers.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 5, please.
Agenda item number 5 is a motion to approve the airport director's spending authority as approved by the Augusta Aviation Commission on January 28, 2021 in the amount of $25,000.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, so I got a motion and a second. I got one question from Commissioner Hassan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I need some clarity around this. And I've spoken with Rachel Mack, the attorney Rachel Mack, to try to give us some clarity about it because it still is creating some conflict. I think it's something the commission approved in 2018, but it has to go back before the Aviation Commission every year, not necessarily to us as I understand it. But however, the use of it is what is needs to get ironed out, how it's to be utilized. And so I'd like Ms. Mack, if she could chime in here to try to give us some clarity on that.
Attorney Brown, is she nearby? Do we know if she's in a waiting room based on this agenda item?
That makes sense.
Can you repeat that, please, sir?
Is she in a waiting room based on this agenda item, the attorney, Ms. Mack?
No, she's not.
Okay,
So-
well,
But
Can we just
she's-
pull it
she's-
off next week?
She's available.
Oh, you can get her?
Yes, I can. Just one second.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if we're gonna hold your committee up,
We just-
I'll deal with it Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Okay.
All right then. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Bonner, we can go ahead and vote on number 5, please.
Oh, wrong number. Sorry.
Attorney Brown, we're gonna hold it till Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms.
Wait,
Bonner.
wait. You got a motion and a second, right?
Yep. Ms. Bonner? Can't hear her.
Are we moving it forward with no recommendation or?
No, there was a motion and a second to approve.
So you want to
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead and vote.
vote? Okay. Ms. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. Item number 6 is a motion to approve change order number 1 to construction contract with SD Clifton Construction in the amount of $6,338,000. This is the first change order requested on the project.
So
I believe
moved.
6,000.
Is it 6 million, 6.8 million?
I said million.
It's 6,000.
It's 6,000.
6,000, okay. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I already had one.
Second. Motion and a second. Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Okay, Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Jordan Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. Item number 7 is to approve the minutes of the Public Services Committee held on February 9th.
Can I get a motion to approve, please?
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. And, okay, we're back to our alcohol petitions. Ms. Walton, she was trying,
Is she in the chambers or is she?
yes, sir, there she is.
Okay. All right, number 1.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. I apologize for my error. I put the wrong time on the letters that were mailed out to the applicants, but I did reach all applicants and they are all about 10 minutes away. I was used to the 2 o'clock meetings that we had been having, and I put the wrong time. So my apologies, my error.
Okay.
I do have one of my applicants here in the chamber now.
Can we skip? What number is it?
Mr. Weir is number 3.
Okay. Ms. Bonner, if we can go to number 3.
Okay, Ms. Walton, is he at the podium with you?
Yes, he's here.
Okay, would you proceed, please? Item number 3.
Okay, item number 3 is alcohol number 21-05. It's a request by John Weir for a Sunday sales license to be used in connection with Noble Jones located at number 15 8th Street. This application has been approved by the Sheriff's Office and Planning and Development.
Mr. Weir, please state your name and address for the record, please.
All right, it's John David Ware, 15th 8th Street.
Home address.
Oh, I'm sorry, 801 Montesana Avenue, apartment D5.
Any questions, colleagues?
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please vote, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Thank you.
Right.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Between the attorney and Ms. Bonner, can we move these other items forward without the plaintiff, without the applicants being there?
Yes, sir. And if we could, for the record, sir, ask Ms. Walton if there were any objectors to
Ms.
any.
Wall, was there any objectors to the petition? Alcohol petition?
There were no objections to either petition.
Ms. Walton, is there anyone else in the room yet in 1 and 2?
Not yet.
Okay, so yeah, can I get a motion, I guess, to move these forward to full commission?
Motion.
So move. Second, I'm sorry. Second.
Got a motion and a second to move items 1 and 2 to the full commission.
I was actually thinking about approving. That was my point.
Oh, you want to go ahead and approve? Well, I mean,
That's why I asked the question.
so you want to restate your motion, Mr. Clark, to approve? Commissioner Clark,
Motion to approve, moving forward to the next session.
no,
To approve.
To
approve.
approve.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sayers, you okay with that?
Yes, ma'am. We're talking items 2 and 3, right? Which
Yes,
one?
sir.
1 and 2?
1 and 2.
Sir.
Ms. Walton, is 1 or 2 there here now?
Who is here?
2's here.
Okay.
We can just go ahead and bring 2 forward.
Forward.
Yeah, bring 2 forward. Well,
I apologize. It's applicant, alcohol number 21-6. It's a request by Harpreet S. Walia for a retail package beer and wine license to be used in connection with discount food located at 545 Sandbar Ferry Road. This application has been approved by the Sheriff's Office and Planning and Development. That's your full name and home
please
address.
state your name and address for the record. Step as close as you can to the mic, sir. Thank you.
My name is Harpreet Walia and my address is 129 Peaches Drive, Evans.
Thank you.
3009 pin code.
Do we get that, Ms. Walton?
Press again.
Step a little bit closer.
Step a little bit close.
HARPREET, Harpreet Walia.
And your address.
Thank
129 Preakness Drive, Evans.
Thank you. Was there any objections to the alcohol petition, Ms. Walton?
No objectors.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
We have Mr. Clark, we have the motion for Mr. Clark and Mr. Sayers to approve it.
Okay. All right. Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sayers.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. So we're gonna forward item 2 as
Yes.
approved.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Oh, we want to vote on, you want to take that vote for number 1 and 2
I
that we
think,
just had?
I mean, if we can, I would like to do that, but if, for clarity, if we need to have a second vote, just let me know.
Well, we can go with a second vote. Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sayers.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, colleagues. That concludes public services.
Thanks to Ms. Walton for her honesty and forthrightness.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We're not normally on time, so.
Yeah. Mr. Clark, are you ready? Mr. Clark, you're muted, sir.
I am ready. I'd like to
Okay.
call public safety to order, please.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark. If I may, I'd like to consent 1, 2, and 3.
So
moved.
Second.
Was that Mr. Garrett and Mr. Clark or Mr. Williams? No, Mr. Williams and Mr. Garrett. Was that?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
Definitely one of those.
Okay. All right, we have Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams. Mr. Dennis, he's out.
He's muted.
He's muted.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. Good meeting, Mr. Chairman.
With no other business with public safety, this committee is adjourned.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mayor Pro
Is
Tem.
administrative service next?
Yes, sir.
Is there any additions or deletions?
Yes, sir. The clerk's office would like to ask for consideration for an addendum item to be added. Let's see.
Do you have it?
Yes, sir. Just a moment.
Do you have any objections to Ms. Bonner adding an item to this agenda?
I object.
Okay.
Hey,
He not on my committee.
Okay. But you know,
You asked-
respect, I might need him later on down the road, so.
Well, you look out for him, not me.
you said well there any. You didn't say from the committee.
I did
Yes,
know you was
sir.
English. I forgot you was an English major.
Look,
Well, we'll get that to you. We'll go ahead with the agenda and I'll get you my addendum item
Okay.
to you.
So my
Okay,
colleague that's on the committee as well as not on the committee, you have an opportunity to weigh in with us, especially my colleagues is on. I'd like to consent item number 1, item number 2, item number 3, item number 5, and item number 6. Are there any objections to
Oh, so moved.
Second.
that? Second.
I'm gonna take Mr. Franum and Mr. Hassan.
Yes.
Okay. Consent agenda. Mr. Hassan,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 4, Ms. Bonner. I just, number 4.
Item number 4 is a motion to approve Housing and Community Development's request to procure 2 Georgia real estate brokers firms for the Laney Walker Bethlehem project with an agreement for a period of 1 year.
I'm on the real question to the administrator, to Mr. Welcher, is how do they plan to allow 2 in the same space? They break it up, or what's the protocol of using two? That's the first time they use 2 realtors.
Yeah, I'll defer to Director Welcher, but I do know that the thought was to try to increase some of the diversity of our businesses who could participate in this space. And so we've been looking to do that kind of up and down the spectrum. And so that's a big part of what this was. But I'll defer to Director Welcher to let you know how it will actually operate in practice. And I believe he is in. Yep, he's in and unmuted.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Welcher.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. So this basically is just our motion to approve request to procure through procurement as a RFQ 2 Georgia real estate brokers firms for the Laney Walker Bethlehem revitalization project for a period of 1 year with additional 1-year options. The mindset is basically to provide opportunity to new firms biannually. And what we've done is we've gone back, taken a look at the actual RFQ, and what we've done is sort of amended, some of our requests and asks via the RFQ. Very confident that what we've done is provided competition, an equal competition amongst any firm that seeks to have interest in this opportunity. So I feel very confident about what we've provided to you all as support documentation. And at this time, I'm willing to take questions.
Director Hawthorne, would you mind if I just chime in on one thing that we did notice about the process, about how easily it is for folks to get kicked out on the front end of the process?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so one thing, commissioners, is that we've noticed is that as we procure things, you know, if a signature is missing or if you didn't complete a form or whatever it is, you can get kicked out of the process very easily. And so this was kind of my first time looking at the process this way. And so one of the things that we want to look at is how do we add some technical assistance for new firms who haven't done business with the city before, so that we can kind of help them through the process so they don't lose out on these low-hanging fruit opportunities and not get a chance to compete. And so as we move forward in the process, I think Director Welcher has done his part to try to diversify the process, but I think collectively we've got to add some assistance and education to folks who are trying to do business with the city. So we'll be adding that as a part of our procurement.
Okay, I'm gonna hold my question. I'm gonna go to Commissioner Dennis Williams. He have a question, and I'll come back to myself. Go ahead, Commissioner Dennis.
My question is, are these two companies local small businesses for our area?
Well, if you look at the way that it's written, there are more points that are actually given for local firms.
Okay. Okay, I got you now. Okay, thank you.
My question really, Mr. Welch, was really, will it be operating in the same space? Are you giving them separate sides within the Lane and Walker Bethlehem area? Or are you putting them in the same space at the same time? Either one can list us.
No, sir, it will be separate spaces. We don't want to breach competition amongst our two firms, but we do want them to work collectively. And then they can sort of work collectively, but they can also coincide. So where we're giving about 6% is given off each sale of each property. If they work in isolation, of course, that 6% will go to that respective firm. But if they work in tandem, then it will go to 3% for each firm. But of the 1,100 acres, for that most part, what we're doing is just saying, hey, this is 1,100 acres. And we want to be sure that each one of them has a plan of attack and a plan of action based on the number of developmental nodes that we're currently working in.
Okay, all right. Are there any other questions? Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Sun,
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Number 7, Ms. Bonner.
Number 7, discuss authorizing the administrative finance department and other relevant departments to conduct a 30-day review of impact, feasibility, and cost of an up to 15% fiscal year 21 tax break to coincide with federal and state eviction moratoriums for landlords providing workforce and affordable housing.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to bring this forward. I want to preface my comments with the first statement, and that is this request isn't committing the city to anything, but rather it is a request for support to allow the administrator and his designees to do this analysis and review and bring it back to us within 45 days. As all of us know, over the course of the pandemic, we've assisted residents at the federal, state, and local level. We've also done a good job of helping businesses. Recently, the city of Augusta received substantial funding necessary to assist families that were at risk of losing their housing and on the verge of homelessness. At the federal level, the government has provided an extension to the eviction moratorium. And so once again, I'd like to ask for support from the commission for the administrator and his designees to do an analysis over 45 days on what the impact would be if we were to provide a property tax break for landlords who provide workforce and affordable housing. That's the request, and it would help bolster our efforts in terms of providing pandemic relief in the city of Augusta.
Commissioner Sayers.
Thank you. And I think I clearly understand what the mayor is asking. I have a couple of reservations about this. And the reason why is we have a lot of folks who live in Augusta who live in apartment complexes. And many of these apartment complexes are owned by mega companies, or they are part of a company. So I'm just concerned, number one, what type of landlord we will be targeting. And I understand this is an inquiry, but I think part of that need to be that many of these particular apartment complexes here in Augusta are owned by mega companies. And I think that need to be a definite part when we talk about this impact, not and looking at what that will cause. So they, far as that go, I think that need to be an integral part of this inquiry. Thank you.
Yeah, anybody else before I make my
Yes,
comments?
sir. Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead, sir.
Well, he's not asking us to do it. He's asking us to do a study. So I make a motion to approve.
Second.
He's just asking for a study.
Well, let me say this. The Governor Kemp, I think in the mail, I'm sure you're aware of this, my colleagues as well. Governor Kemp announced $552 million for Georgia rental assistance Friday. So many of these things that will be taken care of through that process, and they're going to be going through the Department of Community Affairs, setting up a portal as we speak to address some of those issues. As of right now, even if we've done a deep dive and done a study of it, I don't know exactly where our resources are going to come from to accommodate these particular landlords. And so I think the state is doing a very good job here thus far, and they're just not setting it up. I would suggest that we wait up until the state does what they do and not tie our resources, meaning our staff, up, trying to do a deep dive up until we get an idea exactly who is the governors with the $552 million, who their plan is going to fund and how they're going to go about doing it, and see if anything we can do. I still at this point don't know where our funds will come from just anybody, even if we just do that. But right now, as of Friday, here's what it says. So on Friday, Governor Brian Kemp announced the state of Georgia received more than $552 million stimulus funds through the Federal Emergency Rental Assistance Program. The effect of COVID-19 has many Georgians hard financially. Kemp said in addition to protect the lives, we protect livelihoods so that Georgians continue to have economic opportunities. And I'm pleased to be able to provide this rental relief to renters and landlords who have been impacted the most. The Department of Community Affairs will administer the Georgia program, which be subject to U.S. Treasury guidelines that are still under development. So my question is, Mayor, not that I don't concur with what you're asking, I just don't think what to do is simultaneously let the Department of Community Affairs do what they're doing and not to our resources. I don't know where our money will come from. I still don't have an idea about that one. Even we found something. But here's $552 million to the state of Georgia that are being allocated. Ms. Scott.
Yes. Mr. Donald, do you know anything about this program and how the money would be dispersed to local municipalities?
So it wouldn't go to, yes, ma'am, I do. So I've researched it and I reached out to the to DCA. I guess it's been Friday now. May have been Monday. I'm sorry, days a little mixed up, but reached out to them, and it actually would go directly to landlords and lessees, the tenants. The interesting thing about this one is that none of the other, I guess, offerings have really carved out support for landlords in the way that this one has. But I think the way that I would look at the request from the mayor is we could look at how to support our landlords and businesses in applying for the DCA grants, as well as evaluate the fiscal impact on Augusta. I don't think he's directing us to simply spend Augusta funds. I think it's more so look at how we can provide relief focused on this for our business owners. And so I think in partnering with DCA and using that as a tool and exploring whatever other tools are out there, we can provide an update. I would caution the commission though, you know, we don't necessarily have a real estate arm here in Augusta. And so what we can provide might be limited, but I think we can definitely provide a high level overview, crunch some numbers, and figure out how to be a partner with DCA.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I got to follow. Let me follow up, Ms. Scott, unless you got to follow up. I want to
No.
ask the administrator. Mr. Administrator, on what you just said, if resources have to come from us, do we have any more federal funds that's been allocated to us by way of CARES, that kind of thing for this process? I know we're not at that point. I just hate to do a deep dive with no money.
So no, so the study that we would do, I mean, there's no funding, I guess, in my office budget to do a formal study like that. But I mean, listen, personally, I got some relationships with DCA. I already called on some of those. I think you've seen, I assess documents fairly well. So I don't have an issue with that. And I'm confident our finance folks could figure out, you know, any fiscal impact, positive or negative, to Augusta. So I wouldn't be committing to some 100-page document, but I think an assessment of the offerings that are out there and what Augusta can do to both partner or deliver something on our own. I think you guys received a pretty detailed overview of the Biden rescue plan, as well as subsequent updates. You know, maybe this plays into that as well. So I think that's definitely what we can commit to do with our limited capacity.
Timeline, what's a good timeline for yourself?
I think the mayor asked for 45 days, and so we would definitely be able to deliver a high-level overview within 45 days. Now, I will say we've gotten quite a few have the administrator look at, you know, requests, and so I think we're still delivering on those, but we are getting to some capacity on some things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Wade? Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I mean, whether we do 45 days or stretch it out to 60 days, all he's asking for, and you can't do anything. You can't do anything without data. So he's just looking at the numbers. So I think, you know, we ought to grant him at least that. Go ahead.
No, I don't have a problem. I was trying to get some clarity, Commissioner.
Okay.
Did we get that? Can we get that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's
motion
fine.
second.
That's fine. Did I get a second?
Yes, Mr. Son.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Phantom.
Ms. Scott, you had no question? I'm sorry.
No, second.
Okay.
She a thirded.
Your committee done ran away on you, ain't it?
I'm seeing, man. I'm seeing.
No, it's right there.
All right, come on.
So let me get some clarity on this motion from Commissioner Bobby Williams, if I can, Mr. Kassan, that he's referring this to the administrator for a 60-day review and study.
No, motion was already there, Ms. Bonner. I think it was 45 days. That was the mayor had requested.
Right.
So that was already there. And the administration said that's sufficient for him. So we didn't bother the 45 days. He just was speaking to give it more time if need be. If I understand everything correctly.
Right.
You got it, Chairman.
Will y'all clap for me? Will y'all clap if I got it right?
Yeah, and I want to let you know you're a better administrative committee person than the last person. So we're gonna leave it right there.
Okay. Mr. Son. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Well, we know where that IQ stand.
Ms. Bonner, you have to leave.
Voting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Phantom.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the renegade on your committee.
Yeah, that motion carries. It's unanimous.
But Commissioner Side, will you tell him flattery gets him nothing here?
Item number 8.
Number 8.
Item 8, discuss if there's a need for a blue ribbon committee and or different avenue to study the consolidation bill charter. This was deferred from our last commission meeting, requested by Commissioner Ben Hassan.
Mr. Mayor, you want me to start or you start?
Mr. Chairman, this is your agenda item.
Okay. Well, you know, from day one, Mr. Mayor, when we was meeting with the delegation, I've always been of the mindset that we didn't necessarily need to do a blue ribbon committee to have a conversation of whether it's about the charter, whether it's going to be about enhancing the pay. We wanted to reach out to the state. I'm still of that mindset on a personal level that we still don't need that. I think that's something the commission can make a decision to act or not to act. At the end of the day, I really do believe that. But let me set that aside if you don't mind. I'm hoping that don't deviate from the overall conversation. I still have the mindset that I think the mayor's salary needs to be increased. I'm of the mindset that the commission salary needs to be increased. I don't think that this has come on the auspices of saying increasing the mayor's responsibility. I think, Mr. Mayor, as I looked at you now the last couple of months in particular, I've watched you, this is my terminology, this is not yours. I've watched you begin to, in my mind, rebrand yourself, being more proactive, taking on more initiative about things that you're doing, making more public commentary. All those things have real value. And most times we don't expect that no other mayor has really done those kind of things, but those things have value. Those times take time beyond, I won't say necessarily your job responsibilities, but those things have value as well. So I think if a mayor just be active in the path that you're going on, I don't think that has to say that, because you hear there's a scuttlebutt. You didn't say it. They say that there has to be more responsibility. I don't necessarily agree with that. If you do more of the things that you're doing now, and that's the message directly that you do. Let me talk to the mayor's position and not you. Do just some of the things that you're doing right now and being more aggressive about addressing issues in this community, putting things out, talking about those things, meeting with folks as you're doing now, all those things I said at the end of the day have real value. So number one, the Blue Ribbon Committee is something that I still agree. I still believe that there's no need for. And number two, I still believe in spite of that, I think also the demand salary and the commission salary something that the commission consider.
Are you going to the mayor, Mr. Hassan?
Mr. Mayor, as your time comes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, they fit you in automatically from the
Yes,
scene
sir.
to be.
Yes, sir.
The mayor is muted.
Mr. Mayor, it's on you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I think my position on this has been consistent, and that is that as we have these discussions, and I've consistently said this, that they need to be open, transparent, and that's all that I've advocated, regardless of what we're talking about, that we are elected by the people. We're elected not only by the people, but to represent them in the interest of our entire community. And as such, there are ways for us to have those conversations in a constructive manner and to engage the very people who brought us to these roles that we serve in. And that's been my position regarding this.
Can I speak now?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we can talk about this. Go ahead. We can talk about this all day. I do believe that if we were to vote on it, even if we were to put it on the consent agenda, that somebody would pull it off. So I want to send it forward without a recommendation to the full commission. Everybody's going to want to talk about it anyway. So my recommendation is just send it forward without a recommendation.
Talk about it. Commissioner, there's not a single commissioner that can't weigh in on this committee.
I agree.
So don't have
I agree.
to listen to okay.
I agree, but I believe if we put it on the consent agenda, what have you, that it's going to be pulled anyway. So that's why I wanted to just send it forward without a recommendation. You don't have to agree. We can keep talking about it.
We have to talk about, we get a motion one way or the other. We can make a motion.
I seconded that. Agree. I seconded that.
He seconded that we forward it.
Yeah, I already seconded it.
He seconded that we forward it to the commission.
Okay. Okay. Bob, you
Yes,
take a
sir.
vote on it.
Mr. Hassan,
No, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franham,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries 3-1 with Mr. Hassan voting no.
Item number 9, Ms. Bonner.
Item number 9, discuss on exploring and adopting an electronic signature software such as DocuSign.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, thank you again, members of the commission. This item is a simple one. As someone who signs as many documents as Ms. Bonner on a regular basis, and interfacing with whether it's the Georgia Department of Transportation, the CSRA Regional Commission, DCH, DCA, or any host of outside agencies, the Federal Transit Administration, with our public transit and Ms. Dottery and her team. Electronic software and signatures is the rule of the day. It's how governments are moving forward and being efficient. And so what we're asking for simply in this is, once again, allowing the administrator to task the appropriate department and staff with reviewing, procuring, and implementing an electronic signature software such as DocuSign to help make our government more efficient. Most recently, Director Malik reached out to us and sent an email to us and said that his counterparts at the Department of Transportation were going to be going exclusively to electronic documents and signatures. And so I think it's time for us here in the city of Augusta to leverage these opportunities and pressure points to help move us in that direction as well. So that's what this request is, a discussion on that with a request, if it were to be made in the form of a motion, and that is to, again, allow their administrator to task the appropriate department with reviewing, procuring, and implementing an electronic signature software such as DocuSign.
Let me ask a couple of questions first, Mr. Mayor, of you. How does this, so would the clerk still, what role would the clerk play in if we do that? And would this be 100% for all intents and purposes?
The clerk will play the same role that she plays now. Madam Clerk and I, on a regular basis, we sign documents electronically now, again, with the agencies that I mentioned. There is a formal process and it moves from one person to the next. It also includes the attorney who, from time to time, reviews them as to form. And once that approval is made, it allows us to be a little bit more efficient in terms of, no one will ever worry about where the document's at because you'll know where it's at. Mm-hmm. And so all of that is fairly seamless, and it moves us into the 21st century.
So let me add to this, and I'm gonna go back to you. I think I heard we let the administrator to look through this, and I'm gonna go to some of my colleagues. From an organization and efficiency, if the turnaround time in the ballot, and how does the mayor pro tem event that you all you're not in place, and we have to defer to the mayor pro tem to sign documents. If they're going through a system, do we have access to those documents to get the mayor pro tem to sign off on those documents? I don't know. I'm just asking, thinking out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are things that happen seamlessly. In the event that I were absent, the mayor pro tem would be charged with being called on by my office to sign a document in my stead. So nothing changes other than instead of having, as I have on my desk over here, a stack of papers like this, we've got an electronic document that I can sign, and it then gets pushed out to Ms. Bonner for attestation.
So around efficiency perspective, Mr. Mayor, many times I'm gonna say, but we run into directors from quite time to time having to come and sit and to get their documents. Does this help us in that regard?
Well, most of the time when people say the documents in the mayor's office, it's just not true. I have another word for it that I feel passionate about saying, but that's why we have a tracking system over here. We know when it shows up and when it's not here, but generally it's not true because it's not here. But once it is here, we can track from the time that it's in the office and when we deliver it to the clerk's office as well.
Okay, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chairman, I 100% agree with this. I think that this not only needs to be in the mayor's office, but needs to be across this entire government, from Parks and Rec with people renting out facilities to procurement where we can. This holds people accountable and it makes it easy. And you don't ever lose anything. So I make a motion to approve as stated on this agenda item.
Mr. Mayor, give us your idea of what you're asking once again, and let it become the motion if y'all don't mind.
Well, again, as I said, this was a discussion. In the event that there's a motion, it would be to task the appropriate department with reviewing, procuring, and implementing an electronic signature software such as DocuSign that would help make the entire government more efficient in our signing, delivering, and communicating documents.
If you're going to embrace that, I appreciate you put the administrators in there with the appropriate department. I think you had administrators.
Well, I said the administrator tasking. Yes, the administrator tasking his appropriate staff.
Okay. Any other questions? So we move on and take the vote.
I need a second.
Second.
The only thing I will clarification is that, you know, it might not be DocuSign, but at least some form, not just DocuSign. So we keep it open.
Okay.
Like that. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Ms. Bond?
Mr. Son?
Yes, ma'am.
There's something
Mr.
fun.
Scott?
Yes, ma'am.
Join.
Mr. Franham?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
That fail?
No, sir. That carries. It's unanimous.
Ms. Bond, go back to your addendum item, please. Can you read it to the record?
Yes, sir. And thank you, committee. The reason I'm asking for this consideration.
Ms. Bond, excuse me, Ms. Bond. Can
yes.
you read it? Exactly what it is for us, please?
Okay. In accordance with the Procurement Code Section 10.1060, I would like to request that RFP item 2187, Legislative Management Software, Electronic Agenda for Augusta, Georgia Clerk's Office, be canceled so that further review, evaluation can take place, taking into consideration our implementation of the electronic online recodification of the city code, which is scheduled by the end of the first trimester, thereabout. The possible integration of these two functions could be in the best interest of Augusta, Georgia. I believe it will be a nice fit for the organization, especially with the current and upcoming integration with the Muni Code services we already use. So,
Commissioner, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry.
Motion to approve.
Second.
that's Mr. Bobby Williams, Mr. Franham, and Ms. Scott. Third.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Son.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franham
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. I believe that's it for you, sir.
All righty. Guess I can make my therapist in time.
Therapist.
Make my therapist. Yeah.
Oh,
I got.
don't set that one up on a teed, Ben.
That's your brain therapist or what?
Yeah. Gotta go make.
Ben's over there in his feelings.
Okay, we
You go
have-
take care of that. Go take care of that knee.
Okay. Do you have a
I want-
consent agenda, Mr. Garrett?
I wanna-
Well,
I
I
want
hadn't had
to
time to read it all yet, Ms. Bonner. All righty, let's get engineering services started. I think we have everybody except Mr. Johnson, who is at a doctor's appointment. I guess we'll start with item number 1.
Item 1 is to approve the minutes of the Engineering Services Committee held on February 9th, 2021.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any
We'll vote on.
discussion?
We'll vote on that.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
and Ms. McKnight.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Johnson out.
And that concludes our engineering services committee. Thank you, guys and lady.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This time we'll call Finance Committee to order.
Yes, sir.
Are we broke or something? Ain't nothing on this agenda.
Your
Mr. Chair,
therapist got it all. Request a motion to approve item 1.
So move.
Second.
We have a second and a motion.
Motion. All right, Ms. McKnight. Okay. Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms.
So
Catherine
crazy.
McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Francine Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. That concludes finance.
Thank you.
All right, are you rolling?
That finance agenda get less and less.
Yeah, get an audit going or something.
Mhm.
Well, we got something coming.
That means he's making up something.
Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Bonner.
Y'all be good.
What
What
Thank you,
was the-
everyone. Thank
our
you.
previous commissioners always told me, Commissioner Shine got a file on everybody, everything.
This